In this video tutorial, we will discuss different ways that eXpress can be used to generate recommendations for prognostics. A typical system prognostic requirement will require that a certain percentage of system failures be prognosed. One of the first questions that PHM engineers on a project might ask themselves is which failure should be prognosed. An even better question would be which failures, if prognosed, would best serve this project's prognostic requirements and goals. The eXpress software provides several mechanisms for ranking failure modes based on various criteria, such as failure rate, failure severity, relative criticality, etc. In this video, we'll take a quick look at three approaches to ranking failure modes for prognostics: the eXpress Criticality Report, the Famica Plus Critical Failure Diagnosis Chart, and the eXpress Prognostic Candidates Report. All three of these approaches, because they involve the hierarchical evaluation of failure severity, must be invoked within an eXpress Famica study. This means that not only failure modes, but also failure effects must have been modeled in eXpress. If, however, the true effects of each failure are not yet known, the analyst can automatically create failure effects to represent the propagation of that failure. This allows failure modes to be ranked in areas of the system for which a Famica analysis has not yet been performed. The eXpress Criticality Report is invoked by selecting Criticality from the Reports menu within a Famica study. Since for the purposes of prognostic candidacy we're interested in the criticality of each individual failure mode, we will include only quantitative failure mode-based statistics in this report. When the criticality report is run with these settings, the resulting table lists all failure modes in the system, ranked by relative criticality. This relative criticality is calculated by multiplying the failure rate of each failure mode by a percentage derived from the maximum severity that's been assigned to an end item effect, that is, a top-level system effect of that failure mode. The way in which these percentages are derived from the severities assigned in eXpress, as well as how the analyst can manipulate these percentages using custom severity attributes, is described in a video in the series dedicated to the eXpress Criticality Report. In short, in the displayed report, failure modes have been ranked based on relative criticality so that the most severe and most frequent failures are always listed at the top of the table. A second way of using eXpress to obtain recommendations for prognostic candidacy is to generate the eXpress Critical Failure Diagnosis Chart in Famica Plus. This approach is particularly useful when diagnostic analysis has already been performed for a given design, because it will include this information in the chart. Here we go, and now we'll just hide these panels so we can see as much of the chart as possible. Now, in this Famica Plus chart, individual failure modes and effect combinations are ranked by relative criticality, with the relative criticality value being calculated in the same way as we've already seen in the eXpress Criticality Report. As a result, the failure modes in this chart are ranked in the same order as in the quantitative criticality rankings table in the Criticality Report. In fact, three of the columns in this table present the same values that were listed for each failure mode in that table: the failure rate, severity class, and relative criticality. At the far right of the chart, however, there are 5 columns that did not appear in the eXpress Criticality Report. These columns describe how well each failure mode is detected and isolated by the diagnostics in the study to which this Famica has been linked. This chart is described in detail in the video on the eXpress Critical Failure Diagnosis Chart in the series of advanced videos on Famica Plus. In short, failure modes have been ranked based on relative criticality, with the most severe and most frequent failures listed at the top of the chart. For each of these failure modes, we can see how well the diagnostics is currently able to detect and isolate those failures. A third way of using eXpress to determine which failure mode should be prognosed is to run the eXpress Prognostic Candidates Report. This report, which is invoked by selecting prognostic candidates from the Reports menu within a FAMICA study, is discussed in detail in a series of videos dedicated to that report. This method of generating recommendations for prognostics differs from the other two in that it allows the analyst to specify the priority to be given to the different ranking criteria. As in the previous two approaches, the probability and severity of each failure are included among these criteria. This report also allows the replacement time to be taken into consideration to ensure that critical failures with long repair times are prognosed so that mission readiness is not jeopardized. Let's run the report giving equal weight to the failure probability and maximum severity and no weight at all to replacement time. We'll also set this report up to include similar columns to what we've seen in the previous two approaches, and we'll generate this to an Excel spreadsheet. As you can see, this report lists most of the same failures at the top of the table, although the values of the calculated rankings are different from the relative criticality values used in the previous two approaches. In the series of videos on the Prognostic Candidates report, an entire tutorial is dedicated to the calculation of these rankings. Now, one of the biggest advantages of using this report is that the analyst can tweak the priorities to add emphasis to the particular criteria that serve the current prognostic development goals. If, for instance, the analyst desires to prognose as many failures as possible using as few prognostic measurements as possible, then they could run this report based purely on the failure probability of each failure mode. We would do that by zeroing out the other criteria and generating the report. Notice that now in this table, all of the failure modes are listed in failure probability order. Now, the default settings for the report use the severity settings as the primary criteria and the individual failure probabilities as secondary criteria. If we increase the difference between these two priority values, say by reducing failure probability to 10, so we have a 5-to-1 ratio between severity and failure probability, and then zero out the priority for replacement time, then when we run the report, we get our failure modes ranked first by the maximum severity columns, and then as a secondary sort within each severity category by the failure probability column. As you can see, by allowing the analyst to specify the relative importance of each of the ranking criteria, this report can be used to generate ranked lists of prognostic candidates for a variety of development scenarios. This concludes this video introduction to prognostic recommendations within eXpress.